majoring in computer information technology and minoring in philosophy, and he plans to pursue his master's in English literature after he graduates. He is excited to share his spiritual voyage from emotional darkness into the heights of truth and wisdom, and I'm delighted to be here.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Aristotle's statement, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom," distills the essence of my presentation in powerful accuracy. Over the course of the next 15 minutes, I will address the concept of evil and how I have overcome the oppression of its effects. The themes I will discuss regard the evils of not knowing myself, the consequences of a false medical diagnosis, and the deadly ramifications which stem from negative social influences. In the 4th grade of elementary school, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, which in major part led me to believe I was not intelligent. And for a long time, I allowed that diagnosis to define me. Amid my condition, I fell subject to the impression that I was not equipped to handle life like everyone else. During these developmental years, there was a strong element of social stigmatization, which haunted me at every step. In that each year during my schooling, I was often called out of class to attend special education meetings, in which my teacher would frequently address the class, "Matthew, report to the special education office." Speaking of the social horrors of my humiliation and its branding effect on my psyche, I'm reminded of a time at school, as I patiently waited to see my high school counselor. I had grown a rather large boil that consumed a great deal of real estate on my chin. The dean walked in, looked at me with a disgusted look, pointed across the room, and rudely shouted, "He's got an STD on his face, somebody get him out of school." It's okay to break a laugh. You can imagine the effect that this had on my self-image. The congealment of these factors defined the way I thought about myself and garmented me in a false identity. As time progressed in getting to know myself more deeply, I journeyed into an eye-opening revelation that shed piercing insight regarding the fact that the current education system is not fit for every individual's learning style. The current system of learning set up in today's schools fosters impulsive thinking. It achieves this by creating a generic pedagogical environment where it attempts to accommodate the most amount of learning for the greatest amount of students. However, the system does not address each of our unique learning styles. Over time, I found my diagnosis of ADHD to be ill-conceived, because in my understanding, I have found that the ability to focus is an art and a science. In connection with my learning process, I discovered that higher intellectual thoughts involve a longer duration in thinking about a certain subject matter. Rather than being forced to derive an answer to a question in the immediacy of a brief moment. Similarly, Helen Keller stated, but in college there's no time to commune with one's thoughts. One goes to college to learn, it seems, not to think. Having the realization that a true education should stir us to action, and not merely the storage of knowledge, I dawned with the vivacity of a new awareness. Once a commitment rooted itself deeper into my soul to more fully cultivate my human acumen, my life took on a greater perspective of meaning. In this commitment, I resolved to dedicate myself to the pursuit of dialectical introspection, which solidified in taking up a minor in philosophy, which I've already completed. Of the many things philosophy imparts to the individual, one thing in particular stood out, concerning the fact that we should frequently take a critical eye to analyze our psychological inventory with a magnifying glass of truth. During the time my medical diagnosis held my identity in disarray, I had achieved many personal accomplishments, such as successfully teaching myself how to program computer software, which at the time I ran 2 online businesses, an internet security service and a web development company. Additionally, I was a sponsored skater and a 5-time national competitive bodybuilder. As my self-concept was heavily distorted in an enigma of falsity, I was unaware as to the intellectual and spiritual magnitude of my personal achievements. Interestingly, the darkness of my delusions, my self-misdiagnosis corroborated by my medical diagnosis, destroyed my ability to discern my self-evident truths. In addressing the evil forces of my past which impeded my growth, most notably my ex-girlfriend, who for 5 years subjugated my spirit. She accomplished this by taking advantage of my insecurities to strip me of my self-worth. She used me as a stepping stone to glorify herself. There was also a strong element of cultural evil which manifested in our relationship, in that her father did not accept me as a person, primarily because I was not of his same Iranian culture. even though we all shared the same religious roots, namely Judaism. As a matter of fact, one day after discovering I was more than just a friend to his daughter, he left me a cutthroat voicemail, saying he would stab me in the neck with a screwdriver if I ever saw his daughter again, even though at all times I had remained ethical and respectable to him and his entire family. Approaching the end of my high school career, I decided it was time to design a life, so I enrolled at Pierce College. 2 years into my community college experience, I awoke with a life-changing realization that lifted my consciousness into a higher height of happiness. At that moment, I set sail, intellectually and emotionally, to voyage into a higher realm of personal excellence. I knew that there were many concepts, vocabulary, words, and skills just beyond my grasp that would greatly calibrate my cognitive compass. So at that moment, I set in stone an agreement with myself to write down every unfamiliar word and concept and commit myself to lifelong learning. During this time, I was anchored by one of my best friends. On the surface, I saw him as a good friend, a person with great potential, and a person I could confide my soul in. However, in spending time away from him, I realized the depth of his aberration and how much abuse I had taken from him. He was a master manipulator. He used his linguistic prowess to coerce me into a path of vice while belittling my beingness. Interestingly, he had a profound ability to remember things. He could recite lyrics for days. He used the skill of memorization as a perfect opportunity to exploit my insecurities. Frequently, he used my shortcomings, coupled with ad hominem attacks, to magnify my lack of intelligence. During this time, my beliefs were tangled in the deepest trenches of darkness. These kinds of programming, as well as other unmentioned social experiences, only went further to invalidate my humanity. Towards the end of my career at community college, I decided it was time to move out of my father's house and move into the dorms of CSUN, which was another step towards my independence. In the beginning of discovering myself in truth, my growing awareness gave me fresh insight into things that I could not see when I doubted myself. Since then, I have journeyed into the gates of a better life. I have discovered that it is not a person's ability to remember things by rote that gives rise to intelligence, but rather it is a person's ability to pursue and apply truth. That is what gives rise to the unconquerable force of intelligence. Over the past few years, I have consecrated myself to rise higher and higher. In my quest to reach this lofty ideal, to become my best, I have filled several notebooks up with a randomity of vocabulary words. My comprehension within a myriad of different subject matters has multiplied, and my understanding of self has taken on a greater depth of meaning. Recently, I enrolled in a literature class and got exposure to a multitude of different avenues of thought, which has motivated me to seek a master's in English literature as my next objective. Coming into close quarters with different faces of evil and being able to lift myself out of the darkness has motivated me to share my knowledge and wisdom. As Rumi, a powerful 12th century voice, stated, "The cure to pain is in the pain." Similarly, in my most painful occurrences of life, I have extracted some of life's greatest lessons. This is the true meaning of turning wounds into wisdom. In breaking out of my emotional cocoon, I am now taking a holistic approach to life by running my own personal training company, while additionally starting up a website called untetheredthoughts.com. This website speaks to the seekers of freedom, who wish to elevate themselves into the light of liberty, self-autonomy, and out of the hands of social tyranny. I designed this website to create an atmosphere of critical thinking, where fantasies and lies can be vanquished with effort, and a person can give themselves the self-command needed to ascend in triumph. So there's an immense amount of symbolism in these figures right here.